Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you're going to meet a true business legend. The great Gary Kusin is in the studio. At different points in his career, he headed up GameStop, Kinkos, and Laura Mercier. He says that you can learn much more from failures than success. His incredible story just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, most of us would feel blessed if we could run one large company in our life. The man who is sitting next to me has led 3 very large companies, GameStop, Kinkos, Laura Mercier, and he says failure is the best teacher. Gary Kusin is in the studio. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm happy to be here.
All right, when you look at your own resume, are you somehow dumbfounded? How did a guy like you end up running these 3 big companies?
The short answer is yes, and I have always said I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've fallen up into everything, and actually when I wrote my book, my editor said after she read my first manuscript, then maybe there was more intention than that. But nevertheless, I didn't know GameStop and I didn't know Laura Mercier would become as big as they were, or I might have been highly intimidated. What I knew was I had a young family. I had to put food on the table. And that's what drove me in those. And I felt they were actually the preparation I needed to be able to step in as CEO of a very troubled Kinkos later in my career.
And they always say nice guys finish last, but you're one of the good guys. Good guys can finish first.
Well, yes, absolutely, positively. And I almost think more importantly than that, good guys have more of a burden, I think, than bad guys, or in fact are empathetic enough to know that role modeling is so critical in business. And we have a duty, I think, especially the good guys, to model the kind of behavior that people can not only have in the workplace, but can have outside the workplace, at home and with their friends.
And at one point, the largest workforce you ever led was 25,000. That's like Waxahachie.
Yeah.
And at that point, you can't know everybody. No one could. Was it odd to have a company so large that you only really knew, your management team
Right.
and a few other employees?
Well, it wasn't odd because everyone knew me, and I was just happy to be in a store whenever I was traveling around the country. It didn't feel like I didn't know everyone because everyone was so welcoming for me. So while big, I felt it was one big family. And frankly, if you think about 25,000 and they are people who get paid by the company, when you add a significant other, maybe 2.4 children, all of a sudden you more think, gee, I'm the mayor of a 100,000 person city.
Wow.
And sure enough, we had things happen that happen in big cities. And anytime my head of HR would come strolling into my office on a Monday morning, I kind of knew I needed to duck under tables. So I was about to hear something I didn't want to hear.
All right, you put all this in a best-selling book. It's called Always Learning. We're going to put this on the screen so people can see this. This came out last summer. Tell us some of the takeaways from this best-selling book.
Sure. So right after my 2-year assignment reporting to Fred Smith at FedEx to integrate Kinkos into FedEx, I had a lot of pressure from a lot of different areas about writing a book. And frankly, I was so tired from the time it took me to turn around Kinkos and get that thing going as part of FedEx. about the last thing I could think about was writing a book. And so I said, no, everybody leave me alone. Fast forward not that many years, but all of a sudden I have a bunch of grandchildren who are they call me Papa, and they want to know about my life and my career. And it felt very important to me to document that career, what lessons I learned, and how I could really feel proud about being able to do things the right way instead of the wrong way. And that was the impetus. But then as I got into the book, my editor said, well, is this a memoir or is this a business book? And because she said it starts off like a memoir and it ends up as a hardcore business book, because I did not cut any corners. I let all the good, the bad, and the ugly fly from GameStop through Laura Mercier and all the way through the Kinkos and Kinkos FedEx into my private equity business, where I was a senior advisor to TPG, a global private equity firm. And it covers all of that. And the goal is not just to document it, but to really emphasize the lessons.
Well, what impresses me is if it was a vanity project, you would gloss over all the failures. But in the book, you actually put a spotlight on the failures.
And I do, and thanks for noticing that. I thought it was really important to be able to say, hey, you know what? Everyone has failures. You don't get a free pass. There is no great executive or bad executive who ever hasn't had failures. And for me, I think it's very important for people to see it is okay to own them, to talk about them, to think about the lessons learned, and to think about what I might do differently next time. But I think shining a bright light on an array of missteps over the course of what could be called a good career is equally important to talking about those things that became big, great companies.
And as I was preparing for the show, I watched dozens of videos. You've been on so many different shows, I can't even add them up. But I found one interview, very transparent. Let's go ahead and roll a clip from that.
I know how to make money, and I can prove that over a long, really good career. I really press on hard analysis. Hard analysis doesn't mean you're going to get it right, but it sure beats having a dream. So you need a few things. You need a real product that appeals to an age group that's young enough that it overwhelms them. And you need to have scarcity, because that's the real way that you build a relationship with your customers, having what they want when they want it and at a price they think is fair. 13 people of our turnaround team went on to become CEOs. That's a world-class team. And the self-awareness / narcissism, that's the other part of it, because God forbid you become successful. Sometimes look out the window. Sometimes you need to look in the mirror.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. Now, HubSpot is the resource that you need to tap into if you are an entrepreneur. It's no secret that starting a business is hard. Even if you have an amazing idea, bringing it to life can feel overwhelming. With HubSpot's new entrepreneurship kit, you can go from idea to IPO with the help of a company that knows a thing or two about growing better. This all-inclusive kit gives you step-by-step guidance and frameworks to help you crush every stage of starting a business. With tools tailored to help all steps of the entrepreneurial journey, it's packed with templates for project management, emails, skill development templates. There's also a solopreneur guide. It's got freelancing, pricing worksheets, and lots more that you can use to get up and running immediately. And best of all, it's free. With expert guidance and frameworks from HubSpot, starting a business doesn't have to be hard. So don't wait to start yours. Go to HubSpot.com/ENT to download the guide right now. Gary, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. Appreciate your time. You have had some incredible success. We're going to talk about Laura Mercier. We're going to talk about GameStop. We're going to talk about Kinkos. We're going to talk about when you had portfolio companies, when you moved from operator to capital allocator with private equity. We can talk about the book. We can talk about your podcast. We talk about all of it. But when you look back at everything, you've had lots of successes, tons of failures too. When I say what was your most notable, your most, I guess, jarring failure that you learned from over your career? What's the first thought that comes to mind?
There's no question. It's first, second, and third. When I learned while sitting in the Austin airport that when I left GameStop, just after 13 years and was 2 years into Mercier, the cosmetics company, and had just left an Electronic Arts board meeting. I had been using my stock. My stock had some real value when I left GameStop, and I decided to start borrowing on margin, scratch the surface, and would never. Where I got in trouble would be at 10% of the lowest stock price it had recorded since we had gone public. So I never paid attention to it, and I knew it was a great long-term investment. Sit down the Austin airport, there's a Wall Street Journal sitting next to me. I pick it up while I'm waiting for my flight, and I look at it and see that GameStop was under $1. And I realized, why didn't I get a margin call? Oh my God, I may be broke because I was in on that margin up to, I don't know, $8-9 million. And had clearly busted the covenant, and no one had called, no one had notified me, no one had anything. And I sat there and went, oh shit, I'm broke. How could that?
Wow. Okay. So when I watched that, I got chills because, I mean, everybody's greatest fear is looking in their bank account and seeing zero. Tell us the rest of that story.
Yeah, I'm not happy to say I'm happy to tell you. However, big lesson here. So I as soon as I could gather my wits, I'd gone into the bathroom at that airport and vomited, and I had missed my flight home, and I was sitting at the gate, and I never heard it called. I was just, it was horrible. I realized I needed to talk to my accountant, and I needed to talk to my banker. So I called both my accountant and my banker. And when I got to see my banker, this is the most telling thing. My banker, when I came in a bunch of suits, people sitting around a table, I didn't know any of them except the president of the bank who I had called. And he said, and I walked him through all that. He said, we were talking before you got here, and none of us in all of our banking experience have ever had a client call us and self-confess that they had busted the covenant on their stock. We have no experience with that, and because you did that, I want to ask you, how long do you think it will take for you to dig out of this hole? And I said, gee, I don't know, but probably at least a year. And he said, that's great. We'll give you a year. And what I learned from that was honesty, integrity, hold yourself to a high standard, and sometimes things work out. What my accountant said was, look, you've got three things in your life. You've got your stock, you've got your house, and you've got your job. You need to do at least two of the three, if not all three. And said, you need a job that pays you. I was doing Mercier for zero. I had because I was dumb and young and had a big house. And my stock was the stock. I needed to sell what I had left after all of this fiasco. And I said, okay, that's great advice. And I was so mad at myself. I had a young family. We had all sorts of dreams. We were doing just great. And I took myself behind the woodshed, and I said, I'm going to get a job that pays real money. I'm going to sell my stock, and we're going to sell the house. And that's what I did. And
incredible. Let's talk about risk, because you and I were talking before the show. I'm reading the Elon Musk book, and he still is a gambler. You're a ready, aim, fire guy.
Yes. So I'll start by saying I've done enough interviews over time. When I hear, because I will inevitably say, well, why do you want to work here? And when I was in the department store business, the answer would be, I've always loved clothes. It's my passion. And I always have thought, goodness, if you have a passion, the worst thing you can do is go start a business based on that passion. What a way to ruin a passion, having a business. I think you need to want to start a business because you have seen an opening in a market. And you have a lot of reasons why you believe you could be successful doing it, not because there's passion associated with it. And my co-founder at GameStop had been a partner at Bain, a big consulting firm. He had finished #1 in our class at business school, but I tended to beat him at poker, so we became really good friends. And we talked about it, thought about it, worked on it forever, and that became the discipline that I took from there 13 years later when I left to start Laura Mercier. I didn't just start Laura Mercier on a whim to become a major global beauty line. I started it because I had managed the beauty business in the department store before I ever started GameStop, and I knew that business pretty well, and I was intrigued with what was happening in the cosmetics business and developed a thesis and went after it.
You're a proud father and grandfather. I know your children are also entrepreneurs. What do you hope that your children are taking away from your life lessons?
Well, they've lived through them, so I can promise you they've taken away the we're going broke part of it. I think they are all much more, it's a fair statement, they're all more analytical than they might have been if they hadn't seen the way I approach things. They are good human beings, which for me is the most important thing, and they've all got their hearts in the right place. And so I feel my wife and I, Carlene and I, are so proud of our kids and our 11 grandkids. It makes our life full.
Okay, do you find, are your kids risk adverse because of some of your setbacks?
Well, yes, one of my sons is quite risk adverse, and the other son's kind of leans forward more than I would, but you want them to be their own people. You just want them to have maybe gained some knowledge from what I went through.
Yes.
My daughters are, one is a published children's book author, and that's her passion. She has loved writing since she was in 2nd grade, and my other daughter is a psychologist, and she's doing what she loves. So I think they enjoy. They didn't all rush to be entrepreneurs, that's for sure.
All right, there's an old saying in the professorial world, the last lecture, and I'll simplify it. If God whispered in your ear and said, Gary, I'm taking you home in 1 hour, but before you leave this planet, there's a room of graduating seniors. I want you to go in there and I want you to tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. What would you tell an audience of graduating seniors?
Well, I would tell them to follow their heart. I would tell them that good has enormous payback for you personally, as well as for the people around you, and that you should, almost like the Hippocratic Oath, never do any harm. But I would focus on honesty, integrity. I can give business speeches all day long. I would not do that if I had a short amount of time. Business doesn't matter. What matters is being the best human you can be, being the family, children, and those sorts of things. So you wouldn't hear me saying accountability.
All right, Gary, we're almost out of time. So final thoughts. What do you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I have gotten a lot of really interesting and good feedback from the book. And so I feel like the points I wanted to make in the book landed. And that makes me very proud. That makes me very thankful to the people who were able to help me on the book. And I think that especially for people early in their career and are still trying to figure out how in the world do I negotiate my way through a career, I think my book is not a bad primer for them. And I would recommend it. And frankly, the audio book, I don't know if you've heard this, but the audio book is my #1 format.
Is it? Do you?
Because I do it.
You narrate it?
And they say, because my East Texas twang comes all the way therough, and people enjoy that, I guess. But it's that's been very helpful.
I love it. Gary, thank you for sharing your heart and your wisdom and your honesty with us. We're going to end with his website, or actually his LinkedIn page, so you can get in touch with him for all your speaking needs. The great Gary Kusin. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.